back. I appreciate that. You're required, but thanks for being here anyway. My name's Brian Nutter, also known as the Nutter Professor, and tonight we're going to be talking about fret care. So, frets, the thought of working on frets for most guitar players, bass players, is just like, there's no way. You know, it's like, it's some sort of unheard of Harry Potter dark magic stuff that people just refuse to even think about. The thought of like something being wrong with the frets on their guitars will send someone into a tailspin. Pro-level guitar players are probably the worst for it because pro-level guitar players most of the time don't know what end of the cable plugs into the guitar and what end goes to the amp. So if something's wrong, then it's just the end of the world. It's not. I mean, it really comes down to like anything that your guys ever hear me talk about. It's not magic. It's not anything special. It's a couple of boards screwed together with some metal hammered into it. There's some magnets in there and some wire and paint, and that's about it. It's really, really simple and basic stuff. We're dealing with like 100-year-old technology now. So let's look at what a fret really is. Now, initially, frets were, you know, like on medieval instruments that would have had strings on them, would have been done with like tied animal gut or hardened bone, or a variety of different things that they would have used to be able to manipulate where the string starts vibration, you know, over on the neck. And then by probably, I don't know, like 1800, something like that, we move into starting to use metal. And you're seeing softer metals like brass used to be able to do that because strings then were made out of animal gut, and then eventually you see them, you know, go into nylon. Well, prior to 1929, Martin was using a bar fret. Bar fret looks like this. So if this is my fretboard, right, actually, here's my fret slot. The bar fret, the entire fret was the width of the fret slot. So all this really is, whenever you get it, it's just like a spool of rectangular shaped wire, really. Sometimes you have to put it through a roller so that you can make the wire narrow enough to fit into the slot, and then you had to crown or round the top of it. And that's all well and good, but obviously with a huge wide fret slot like that, there's a few problems with it. You've taken so much wood out of the fretboard, you've weakened the neck some, so you're going to have a lot of issues with upbow and trying to keep the neck straight. This is also prior to the invention of the adjustable truss rod. Martin didn't even adopt the adjustable truss rod until the 80s. So these were a problem. They're still out there, and there are still guys in town, and probably Nashville and Nazareth, PA are probably the only two towns in the entire world that will actually do a bar refret. But in 1929, Clifton F. Smith comes out with the T fret. So that profile, I'm sure you've seen before on any guitar that you've played that doesn't have binding. So you always see like that little metal section that's sticking out. Well, truly, on that fret, if you took it out, what you would see are these little barbs that are in there ever so often, just to be able to grip the sides of the fret slot wall. That tang is what it's called, that sits down on the bottom of the fret. That is usually around 23 thousandths wide, and then the barbs are a hair wider than that. So you cut a 23 thousandth slot, and then you can press or hammer the fret in, and the barbs will hold the thing in. That made so much more sense, because in that square slot, that thing can just slide out, fall out. It happened all the time. Now, they went from using brass frets to harder materials because we were starting to use steel strings. So that's sort of like, so since 1929, we've been doing this. Now, there's so many variations on this theme now, but let's get into those. With frets, modern frets, there's like 3 different types of materials that you'll see. 1 is nickel silver, 2 is gold Evo, and then the 3rd is stainless steel. Nickel silver actually doesn't have any silver in it. Nickel silver starts off really as brass, and then they add in so it's like copper and zinc, and then they add in about 18% nickel. And what that does is it provides hardness to be able to resist the steel string, and it also turns that brass color into that bright silver color that we see. It's killer. It's the fret that you see on most guitars. It holds up to wear well. It's not super hard. It runs at about 200 on the hardness scale. But then if you're using like pure steel strings, it will dig into the frets quickly. Now, to get a little bit harder than that, you can go to gold Evo. Gold Evo, like nickel silver, doesn't have gold in it. It's a strange mix of stuff. It's copper, iron, tin, and a little bit of titanium. So it's considerably harder than nickel, and it has a gold color to it. So that's, if you're into that, that's awesome. It ranges at about 250 on the hardness scale. So it's not as tough to work with as stainless steel. It's more durable than nickel silver. You're not seeing as much of the gold Evo stuff right now. I think there's a supplier problem with that one. But you know, there's still plenty of it out there. And then finally, there's stainless steel. Now, steel is super durable, and it rates the hardest is about 300. But it does have its drawbacks. Now, the stainless steel, because it's so hard, it's a pain in the butt to work with. Like any guitar repair guy that has to do a refret day in, day out, or has to do level, crown, and polish, or fret and dress, or any of that on stainless steel, as soon as you come in and you go, hey dude, can you do a fret dress on this? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, what do you got? And it's like, I got a Jackson. It's got 24 stainless steel frets that are super jumbos. And he's gonna go, yeah, it's gonna cost you extra. And it will, because just thinking about cutting stainless steel frets makes my tools dull right now. I love to play them though, they're wonderful. They don't wear down as quickly because it is a much harder material, but check this out. Because most strings are nickel plated or just nickel, it eats strings. So you kind of have to, there's a big trade-off there. For me, thinking about like all the classic records whenever I was a kid that I was so into and listening to, no one was using gold Evo frets. No one was using stainless steel frets. All of that stuff was nickel, and those records still sound tremendous. Now, that's like material-wise what you'll be dealing with. Since we're mostly going to be seeing nickel silver on stuff, and you know, most of this stuff is in here or out there in the wild is going to be nickel silver. I've already told you sort of how hard, soft some of these materials are. Well, how long does it take to wear out a set of frets? I don't know. How hard do you play? How hard do you squeeze the neck? I've always told everyone I'm a product of 80s metal. So I used to sit with a metronome and, you know, constantly like learning Paul Gilbert and Yngwie Malmsteen and George Lynch and all of this stuff, just as fast as I possibly could go, so my touch is super light. I don't like strangle the guitar neck. So for me, and I use big frets, I never need to refret my guitar. I never need to fret dress my guitar. I don't dig into the frets. If you're a guy that your biggest mission in life was to be the next Stevie Ray Vaughan, then yeah, you're probably just ripping through nickel frets like nothing. What I want to show you guys is a way that you can fix frets that are a little bit worn. I want to talk about how to do a fret dress. So with that, what we're going to do is I'll show you sort of some criteria to look at whenever you're seeing like dents, divots, or anything like that in your frets. And usually it's going to be in like the cowboy chord area. It's going to be in like A minor pentatonic, E minor pentatonic. You know what I mean? You're going to have your favorite zones, your hot spots, depending upon what it is. You're laughing because you're like, yep. So what you do with a fret dress is we will level the entire tops of the frets, and we're going to go down until those divots go away. So there's 3 steps to this. We will level, what that will end up doing is we'll have a flat spot on the top of the fret. So we got to re-round that. So our second step will be to crown. And now we got a bunch of tooling marks and stuff, and like sandpaper scratches and all this other stuff we got to get out before we can make the thing feel good again. So the last step is polish. All right. So you guys can see here on the screen, right? I've got a Strat neck here in my little jig. And rosewood neck, clay dots. It's got a single action truss rod. If you guys were here for my setup video or setup presentation, I told you guys all about single action or dual action truss rods. So this has got a heel adjustment, so very vintage style neck. Now this is a fresh build. This neck's never been on a guitar, so I don't have to worry about divots, but I do need to, since the frets have just been put in, it still needs to have a full dress as far as like level, crown, and polish. For your own guitar, you know, if we see these dents and divots like right here in our cowboy chord area, and then like right in here in A minor pentatonic and then E minor pentatonic, right? What you're looking for are those great big valleys. If you have a dial caliper, you can measure the top of your fret to the fretboard. Find one that doesn't have any wear. That's going to give you a really good estimation of what the maximum height of your fret wire should be. A medium jumbo wire is going to, from Jescar, is going to end up being 0.047. A jumbo wire is going to be 0.057, a full 10 thousandths taller. So if I have medium jumbo wire on, and I know that my fret wire originally was 0.047, but after it was leveled, it's probably going to end up being like 0.045, 44, something like that. So I'll find one that isn't worn. If I go in, measure inside the divot, and I see that it's down like 20 thou, so it's measuring like 0.025. I gotta do something about that. I gotta dress that. And 2.5 is even too low. So if it's down about 10 thou, I'll dress it. If it's 20 thou down, I'll replace the fret. But let's look at how to dress this out. One of the first things I want to do, just like if I'm doing a setup, is I want to test the truss rod, and I want to see how straight this is. Now you can use a straight edge. I've got my little guy here is mounted in a jig, and it's just like you would mount it in the body, right? And And there are these two little like stops, like right here. Once I'm ready to start working, I'll run those up just so they touch, just to give it some support. So using the straight edge, you've seen like straight edges like these notched ones. Well, these are great, but that's like for trying to see what the straightness of the fretboard is, and I'm not concerned about the straightness of the fretboard. I want to know what the tops of the frets are doing. So if I was going to be replaning the fretboard, yes, I would want to use this to check it. But if I'm going to do a fret dress, I don't need this. I'll get my straight edge out, and what I will end up doing is I will look here in the middle, and I'm looking for any light between the top of the fret and the bottom of my straight edge. I want to see if there's a light that's going to indicate that there's a bow in. If the straight edge rocks back and forth, that means my neck has back bow. So I'll need to loosen the truss rod. If there's a gap, I will want to tighten the truss rod and keep checking. Now, if you're super schmancy like yours truly, you can have this tool. This tool will allow me to place one end on the first fret and the other down here on the 12th, and then the little dial indicator hits right at the 5th fret. Right now you'll see it's set right at about 0, because I've already done this one, so this neck is straight. I don't have to worry about looking for light. I don't have to worry about trying to rock a straight edge on this thing. I can do that, and I can see, nah, my rod's too tight or it's too loose. So I've got this one dialed, I'm ready to go. I can stick it back here in my vise and do this. So one thing to note is that if it's a bolt-on guitar, to do the dress or for the level crown polish, I want to take it out of the body. I don't want to leave it on the guitar. If it's a set neck guitar or it's an acoustic guitar, I will want to put a lot of, probably 3 or 4 layers of masking tape onto the face of the guitar, to the side of the fretboard on either side, because for what we're going to do, you will really, really damage the finish or the face of your instrument. So keep that in mind. Now that I know that everything is straight, I want to mark the tops of the frets. I do that with a colored Sharpie. My 3 favorite colors, I got my 2 favorite colors here. My 3 favorite colors are blue, red, or green. Black you can use, but black honestly will sort of mimic reflection on the nickel itself, so it's kind of hard to see. The color, it makes it way, way easier to see. So I will mark just the very tops of the frets. You could also tape off the fretboard. You could use something like this guy here, which is a stainless steel protector. They make them so that they cover the entire fretboard depending upon the scale length that you have on your guitar. We talked about that too at the setup night. Inevitably, I will end up putting Sharpie on the face of the fretboard. I'm just counting down as to when that's going to happen. That's another good reason for taping off. If it's maple and it's painted like this, I'm definitely going to want to tape the fretboard off. I will tell you why when we get there. There was a lot of pressure on that last fret because I didn't mark any on the fretboard that time. Thank you very much. Okay. My next thing is I'm going to do the level. I'm now ready to do the whole level bit. I've got here an old StewMac. If you guys don't know about Stuart McDonald, stewmac.com, all tooling, yeah. So I've got an old leveling beam here. So these are really great because they're dead flat, they're heavy, they will take sandpaper. Do you need something like this? No. You could make your own leveling beam out of a chunk of maple, or any hardwood really. Maple, walnut, cherry, ash, mahogany, whatever. Just something that you've run on the joiner and you can verify with a straight edge or something like this that it is straight. That's all we're concerned about. So I've got 220 on one side and 320 on the other side. And I'm going to follow the radius here. I'm just going to lightly work my way across. I'm letting the weight of this do all of the work. I'm not pushing down. If you tend to be heavy-handed, think half of that, whatever your pressure is that you're normally using, and then think half of that. That's where we're going. Yeah, if you're a contractor or you do roofing or something like that, I really need you to think like clouds and cotton balls. All right, so what I'm looking for, just a few swipes and passes here. What I want to see, and I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but my blue mark that's on the top of the fret, I want to be able to see fresh, clean metal where that has gone away. As a matter of fact, since there are not that many here, I will do this. You can see right here at the very top of the fret, all of that's gone. So I don't have any blue mark whatsoever. But that's not the case for all of the frets. Like right here, it's fret 7, right about the B string, continuing on up until about fret 15. So I need to sort of focus a little bit on that B string path and then come back for the E string because my 12th fret is also not connecting. The idea is to remove the least amount of material as possible. So if you're trying to remove those divots, as soon as you see that blue mark disappear out of that divot, you're done. Quit. Stop. Put the tool down, step away, and pick up the next tool because we still got more work to do. All right, B string path. That got it. It doesn't take much. It really, really doesn't. Cool. Okay. Now, I've got 320 on the other side, so I'm just going to do a few quick swipes all the way across just to take out those heavier 220 sanding scratches that are running parallel with the string. I will also make like a light pass this way as well to try to get rid of those scratches a little bit so we don't feel them later for whatever reason whenever you're bending. Now, here's one that a lot of folks are just now I'm starting to see people talk about, and that's fall away. Fall away is, now we have all of our, I've got all 21 frets on this thing are dead level because I can see that I've touched every single one of them. I've done it with a precision leveling tool. I know my neck is dead nut straight because I did it with this thing. So I want to take from about 15 on up to 21, I want to sort of ramp those down so that my path isn't going to be just like perfectly straight and flat. It's going to kick down some. The reason for that, if you remember back when we did setup, and I mentioned why we have relief in the truss rod, is to give a little bit of swinging room for that elliptical motion of the string. Well, that big swing is usually right here in the middle. So as you climb up here, and you're starting to get into like the mealy area, right? Then you're starting to kick back up. So what we're trying to do by ramping that down is to accommodate for another area for that elliptical motion as you go up higher and higher, so you don't fret out and you don't have a bunch of string bows whenever you get up here. But how am I going to do that? I will show you. Now you could use your big, yep.
Isn't also part of that we are at the end of the truss rod's useful like
Yeah, absolutely.
It's in the ground.
Yeah, truss rod starts here and it stops 18 inches up here. So that's why whenever we're measuring neck relief, we're measuring it right in this area because that's the majority of the good swinging zone that we're able to manipulate the curvature in our neck. But down here, nothing. So you could do this with your leveling beam, but it can be a bit cumbersome because all we're going to be doing is filing on like 15th and up. So I can use something like this guy, but this has a bastard mill file on it. I don't want to use that because that's really aggressive. So I'm going to use some stick-it adhesive sandpaper and put it directly on my file. You could do this with a sanding block. I just like doing it with this tool because I know that that's also dead flat. So I will remark 15 and up. There's my mark. I did it. Can you see it? I did it. It's right there. I got to take that out later. It's like getting the first ding in your guitar. Now I can breathe whatever so I'm going to want to go a little heavier on 21, sort of like I'm pushing down, and I want to make my lightest sanding marks up here at 15. Now this I will check with a straight edge, because what I'm going to want to see is that I'm getting a little tiny, because Dad can't see. There we go. I want to make sure I'm getting a little bit of a gap between the top of the fret and the bottom of my straight edge. That lets me know that I have indeed put the fall away in. You see, I kept my finger here so that I don't go any further up, that the file bumps into my hand. And I just want to see the slightest little bit of air. Cool. There we go. Need just a hair more. Yeah. Now, certain manufacturers will machine this in, like at the CNC at the fretboard level. Some guys will do it on the plec. Others will do it just like I've done it here by hand. It's going to vary. So you might see one guitar have a big gap there if you put a straight edge on it. You might see nothing because some manufacturers don't put fall away in at all. That's not to say that either one is better or worse. That's just the way they choose to do it. All right, so I've got my level done. All of my frets have a bunch of flat spots on the top. So their cross section really, if you think about it, now looks like this. Here's my tang. The fret comes up here and goes, big flat spot. So what I have to do is re-round the fret. So I'll be taking off more material here and here and leaving just the tiniest little bit right in the middle, showing that I didn't take that off, because if I did, then it will go too low and all my frets won't be level. As long as I leave just a little bit of it, then I should be good. So we'll mark them again. I'm only going to do a few here. Actually, now I can show you before we start. So if you can see like how much of a flat spot I got, right? On here in the middle a good bit. So I'll do those. I'll do like, can you see that one? So I'll blue the whole top of the fret, and then I'll use another little schmancy tool called a crowning file to make it round again. You could crown with a regular file. It would just be a drag. There's a bunch of different types of crowning files out there. The one I'm going to be using today is diamond infused, and it's super smooth, and it doesn't make any kind of chatter, and it's really, really wonderful. So I'm going to go straight across, continuing to keep an eye on my blue line. What I want to see as I file is I want to see that blue line get thinner and thinner and thinner, but uniformly the same width. This is where fretwork gets super tedious and where a lot of people get scared. That's exactly it. Yeah, you're trying to get rid of the meat on those sides there so that that flat edge comes in to like this. So just that one, you can see what my thin little blue line looks like now. So this is what it looked like before, right? And now there's just this super thin blue line here. So I'm good here. I would end up doing that for all of the frets, obviously. So now I've got my level, I got my crown. How do I polish them? The polishing, there's a bunch of different ways, just like anything, a bunch of ways to skin this cat. I usually will do it with sanding sponges because they are, at least this particular brand, is very, very durable. These are from a company called Surf Prep, and I'm using 280 to 320, which is the red, and I'm going to be going 400 to 600, which is the yellow. And these are about 200 thou thick, and they're pretty firm. When we're done, you guys come up here and you can check out all the tools that I've got laid out here. So this process is called a rake. So I'm just going to wrap this around my finger. And I'm going to drag it like this, back and forth. You see that I'm hitting the fretboard as well. And on rosewood or ebony, that's fine. That's why we tape off maple that has clear on it, because I don't want to scratch the surface of the paint. If it's an oiled maple neck, knock yourself out. Don't worry about taping it off, just go for it. So with the rake, what this does, particularly with a sponge, is as I'm pressing down, it's sort of like bumping over, speed bump wise, over each fret, and it's helping to promote that round that I've just done with the crowning file. And it takes out all of those scratches. It also helps remove all of those initial leveling scratches that I put in. And you'll see the difference in the fret wire. Even some of this that I didn't crown at all. And you can see that they are significantly better just after the 320. They already look round-ish, better. They're still not playable yet because there's still a bunch of that like fine sanding scratches in the top. And that step right there usually doesn't take any longer than just a minute or two. And the same thing, I know, bear with me. It's riveting. We do the same thing with the higher grit. Now you could I'm only going to take it up to 600. You could take it up as far as you wanted, like 2,000, 3,000 if you really wanted to. There's a point of like diminishing returns. I feel like 600 to 800 is usually about enough, because nickel isn't super hard and I still need to polish this to make it nice and shiny. So now we look that much better just with that. For not a chrome-like finish. You can polish using Scotch-Brite. Some people use steel wool. There's nothing wrong with using steel wool. If you do, I suggest using Quad-Ot, or like, for old guys like me, it's a, it is the pound sign and 4 zeros. For the rest of you, it's hashtag and 4 zeros. So it's, steel wool's okay. It does a great job. My problem with it is that it makes a mess. It comes apart, steel wool dust gets everywhere. If you're working on a guitar that is a set neck or a neck through, now you have to clean all of this like steel wool residue off of your magnetic pickups because steel's very magnetic. It's gross. So Scotch-Brite, I like gray, which is sort of the medium cut, and then the white is super fine. With this, I will still do that sort of raking motion, but then to do like a really good, nice polish on, I can either tape off and put this on, and then come in and go parallel with the frets as opposed to going parallel with the strings. Now this will give you that not chrome-like finish, but they will be very smooth and they will feel great. If you are fortunate enough to have a buffing wheel, by all means do that. Use the buffing wheel. You can buff open rosewood or ebony if you're looking to give it sort of an aged look. Otherwise, I would tape it off before I buff them. Same thing with the maple. If it's painted, please tape off and then buff that way. I'll show you what my one fret looks like here. Yeah, right? And that's just with a couple of swipes of steel wool, or not steel wool, but the Scotch-Brite. So that will make all the difference in the world in the way the thing feels. If you have a Dremel tool, by that I mean like one of these guys, right? Then they invariably come with like little tool kits like this that have posts and polishing compound and these little buffing wheels. These work great. They make a mess. The rotation is clockwise, so if you're doing this, basically you're just like spraying polishing compound into your face the entire time. But it will give you that super chrome, super shiny look to your fret. Now that's essentially it. Then you could just string the guitar back up and go for it. But what if you want that little push over the cliff, right? A little bit better. You could do the fret ends as well. You see like really, really nice rounded over fret ends that just feel super good. There's nothing sharp about them, or they don't have a bunch of like sanding marks and tool marks and all that kind of stuff on them. That's just the fret ends alone is its own art form. You want to talk about it?
Sure.
Brant here is head of get everything done at Mighty Might. He's the guy that you email at sales@Mighty Might. He's the guy that's answering your phone calls. He's doing that. I'm not answering. I'm not talking to you. I'm not doing it. That's not true. But Brant also, he went through the electric guitar course at Musicians Institute Guitarcraft Academy. He was at Gibson Custom Shop for a while. He has fret dressed more Novo guitars than anyone on the planet, I can assure you. So this particular thing, there's no one better in the business to talk about it than him.
Other than him, because he taught me. So that caveat out of the way. So most of my time fret dressing was always in the production environment. So most things had been like plecked or put on a CNC machine. And while those machines are super accurate, they create a super level surface. It's mathematically perfect. It is not, one, usually pretty, and two, comfortable. Usually a lot of sharp edges, all that stuff. So basically, to do the fret ends, there's probably the most traditional way was a 3-corner file. This quite isn't a 3-corner file, but basically a tri-corner file. For guitar purposes, you would usually take and grind the surfaces down just a little bit to basically, probably here.
Like cross section, you would start with just a triangle. So then you grind those flat. That way you don't dig into your fretboard.
Yes, the reason being because when you take that 3-corner file, you're trying to not dig into the board, which that's the hard part with all this. And then with actually you could either do it coming up to the fret or work over down the fret and roll that file over. And you're basically doing one side at a time. So in the more traditional hand sense, you'd kind of sit here and go over all your frets in that motion, rocking from the edge of the fretboard over to the crown of the fret, and then come back and do the other side the other way. And so you basically have a 2-step process on the treble side, then a 2-step process on the bass side. It's tedious. There's people who can make it look absolutely fantastic, but in a production environment, don't got time for that. So a faster method is to use an older, kind of somewhat worn out crowning file. Reason being, it's already fitting the crown and the whole width of the fret, and you can get both sides at the same time. So basically we work from almost parallel to the board, and then we work to just over that crown. I don't want to come in and start to get into the string path, especially since at your nut, you have a taper, right? Of the strings start here and they start to fan out towards the bridge. So you basically want to start almost parallel, and then I'm stopping right as I kind of rock over that crown. And this is a way to hit both sides of the fret at the same time. And what you can look for, if you're, again, kind of maybe need the visors for this, but you can start to make a little V or U-shaped pattern. And what I'm looking for is to make sure that I'm hitting right down into the corner, coming up and over, and then down on the other side.
It takes this shape, right, that we've crowned again, and gives us sort of this line. Because that top black line is really sharp. But this now has been rounded over down to here. So that sharp edge is gone, and it's really smooth to go up over.
The technique to this is making all your frets look uniform. Because while you're probably doing this the first time, all your frets are not going to be quite uniform. The way to check this with good lighting is to take this out and sight down the neck, almost like you would sighting a truss, seeing the amount of relief. But what I'm actually looking for, I'm not looking at relief at all. I'm looking to see how the light reflects off of every single fret, and does it reflect in the same direction? If it's not, you'll be able to immediately tell how far you've gone over, not far enough. That's why in a production environment, I had how many K lights? I had like 5,600 K. Mm-hmm. It was, the brighter, the better. Be on the surface of the sun. That way I could see all the light reflecting. I mean, I could just kind of glance it like this, and if it all shined the same way, I knew I was where I wanted to be. Now, in dressing all of these ends, you're invariably, just like you are going to make a mark when taking the Sharpie and marking the top of the frets, you are going to dig in, especially with those 3-corner files like I was talking about. It's really easy to take a sharp end and dig into the board. Don't worry, there's an easy way to fix that. And actually, in the production environment with CNC machine marks and stuff like that, you'll usually always have all these tooling marks in the board. That's where we just take a razor blade and scrape away. So I'm just going to go bumper to bumper. And I want to make sure that I'm hitting the whole board. I don't want to hit just, I've made my mark here, but if I just do that, all of a sudden I've lowered this part of the board and it's not a perfect radius anymore. So I want to make sure that I'm taking just away a little bit of material, just the material I need to get rid of the mark, but then make sure that the rest of the fretboard between those two frets follows. And then this is where you can also get into a little bit of roundover. Any production, brand new guitar, you're gonna have pretty sharp ends here. To get rid of those and make it much more comfortable, along with those fret ends, you can kind of just barely, I'm not talking much, I mean, a couple of swipes. We're rocking, we're changing our angle constantly, going from almost parallel with the board to just over. And that's kind of almost my same angle that I'm doing with the crowning 5. We're mimicking the same thing.
It gives your neck that worn-in feel. If you've ever had any Music Man or G&L, and Charvel was probably the first one to really do it in production. If you wrap your hand around any of those guitars, and you'll feel and see that the ends of the fret, the edges of the fretboard are rolled in, and this is one way to get that done.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's all feel-based. There is no right or wrong. Some people would do it way heavier. Nova was known for having a much more broken-in feel. Some necks, and obviously like binding, that throws a whole other curveball into this, especially since you're running into two materials with two different densities. So when you have those two different densities of material, you have to actually change up your pressure and your strokes to make sure that, because you can have rounded over, but generally depending on how, there's also width. Not every guitar has the same width binding. It can be 60 thou, 30 thou.
40 is what
40.
What we were doing on the sides of the fretboard.
So, and again, that's another area where it's very easy to go thin on one side and thick on the other. But another portion to do with if you do not have binding is that now that we've dressed the ends, sometimes getting to that very, or if you've just had fresh frets, say there was a refret done, right at the base of the fret and then on the side of the board, you can feel just maybe a little bit of proudness. And sometimes that can be a little sharp, it can be uncomfortable to play, but the way we can deal with that is to take this turtle file that I like to call him turtle file, shaped a little bit like a turtle, and basically keep it level, well, basically completely parallel to the neck itself. And I've got the file up, so I'm really just on actually the rosewood fretboard. I'm not here down on the shaft of the actual neck. I'm up here. And I've got it barely kicked over just a bit. And just with nice, even strokes, it's all, you've locked your wrist. It's all just forward and back. And doing that.
This is the same technique you would use if you were going to be fixing fret sprout. Like whenever your guitar in the wintertime gets all dry and the wood in the neck shrinks in and the frets start to stick out the sides.
And you can actually hear it if you actually have a metal file. This is kind of one of those signs where it's what he was saying earlier. You'll hear the sound, and that's when to know to put down, like just with the Sharpie, once it's gone, stop, put down the tool. This neck, we're probably not going to hear anything.
No.
Pretty daggum smooth. So, but on a neck especially, like what he was saying, we just come out of super humid Tennessee summer. Then it's going to get bone dry as a guitar sits in an air-conditioned house with the heating on 24/7. All of a sudden, all that wood contracts, and the fret stays the same. So all of a sudden, it seems like it grew and started to poke out the sides, but that's really just the wood contracting. So you got a gig, your neck feels terrible, just a little bit of file work with a steady hand, and you can get that to go away. As far as kind of steps to it, to a fret like dress, when you've actually done all your level, crown, and polish, first step would be bevel. Mm-hmm. So Where's the marker? Or do you have the marker?
I go.
So the first step would be the bevel. Again, like if you're doing a fresh refret, everything's not 90 degrees. So we'd actually want to put in the bevel. You could do that in a multitude of ways. You could do that with this tool. You could do that with this tool. The most easy way to do it, so that the angle's already baked in for you, is this. This is a beveling block. So we got a file, put in at an angle, sit here, rest it on the board. And again, I'm letting the tool do most of the work. I'm not trying to really force or use any muscle to force this along. I'm wanting the tool to do most of the work. If I'm using any muscles, more so just to keep everything locked in this way and just a little bit of downward pressure. And so we do that to both sides of the neck. Again, same like I was talking about earlier. I'd actually use the light to make sure that everything's in the same direction. Generally, you're gonna have to work a little bit more here and here at the ends of the board because you're going over the middle of the board twice as much as you are either end. So then you could use more controlled strokes here, or you could even use a smaller block file just to do this here. Do your little spot checks, sight down the neck, make sure everything's going in the same direction. And we're looking for 30 degree angle.
Yeah. You don't want to go too hard. Like if you go 45 or even steeper, what you end up doing is you end up cutting into your playing surface. So I personally like to stand up that bevel pretty up because I like to have as much playing surface as I can. Varies on manufacturer and who does the job.
So, and again, probably that's actually something more that angle will be steeper the more the round over is prominent, as to match that rounded over feel. So we'll do the bevel, then basically do the round over of the crown itself. So again, that's like, we can do that in multitude of ways. We can do that 3-corner file. There's multiple fret dressing files. This one that I was kind of using to mimic is actually pretty cool because not only does it have actually a little cutout section for the crown itself, but then it's also got actually like diamond tooth file on either side.
What's the number on that one?
That is 1705.
That's another StewMac tool. That 1705 and 1175 and it's also up there. It's a small fret end dressing file that are my favorite too for doing this.
So like, I can do that with it if I want, or I could come over and use either side. Or take the fastest approach.
The schmancy approach.
Yes, the schmancy approach. And as I cut that profile into the end of the crown itself, I'm still leaving that flat spot. And that's actually the part that I'm using to make sure that the light's all reflecting in the same direction. It's this area here, that as you're looking with light and seeing the reflection, that you want that to all be reflecting the same way. If your cut's too drastic or too short, that's where you'll see all the light scatter and your reflections won't be the same way. So we do that. We inevitably get some tooling marks. Get your tool marks out. So sorry, I'm left-handed, so my handwriting sucks. But like I said, there's two ways to do that. Do the blade. But then the blade's also going to leave its own marks. They're going to be very, very fine, but they're just going to be just in the surface of the wood. Hey, we already got sanding pads. So, and this is where you can rake. If you got block inlays though, you can cut this to even smaller shapes. Well, cut that once more. And like for this neck here, like say we had blade marks from something we had to take out, actually in the inlay itself. Just back and forth. And then coming from the other side, since I can't, like the razor blade can't go completely bumper to bumper, then I start from the other side. And then boom, we're gonna have a nice level, shiny inlay when we go to buff that. On a buffing wheel, Dremel, take your pick. Heck, even a wheel on a drill.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely. If you do this, all of these steps with a maple fretboard with paint.
Yes.
You're also looking at finish repair because you will be taking the paint off. So keep that in mind. If you're starting with a fresh neck, it's much easier to do all of these kind of steps up front before you do the paint work. If you're doing an aging job, don't worry about it. Just take the finish off and be done with it. Rub in your dirt and move on.
Which is why you either have like a mask or, again, yeah, tape everything off really good, which I find the easiest way to do that. Any supplier, StuMac, again, sells a lot of this stuff, but you can even buy it in different sizes from any big tape supplier. Heck, Uline, I think, is actually on the inside of both of these rolls. But got your thick, medium, and your thin. And so you're just basically getting that straight line right up next to that fret, and then I like to use my thumbnail. Press along, fret. That. Almost caught it. All right. Then just you're repeating that process all the way up the neck. Say I'm up by, way up at the end here. 19, 20, 21, whatever it may be. Yeah.
1 or 2 pieces of tape inside the fret is all you're looking for. You don't need to have like 3 or 4 different pieces of tape. Just having different widths makes this a lot easier. Another StuMac tool is a tape dispenser that holds 3 different sizes or 3 different widths of tape. And it can make taping off a fretboard go from a 10 or 15 minute process to about 90 seconds. It's life-changing if you're in a hurry or trying to get things done.
And we're just looking to make sure that as we do this, we have it right up next to that crown. It's pressed in. Again, use your nail. Make sure you're taking that tape right up to the fret. And then when we come back, sanding and all that stuff, everything's protected. if you get a bit overzealous with the sanding paper, just always make sure to see where you're wearing thin, reapply some if you need to. If you're doing that a lot, way too much pressure. Back off a lot. Heck, it can even happen though on something that, maybe get a little bit of tunnel vision on. It can even happen in buffing, the buffing wheel. All that heat from that buffing wheel can create a lot of friction, and all of a sudden, that tape's thinner than copy paper.
Or binding and block inlays on a
Or
buffing
that.
wheel.
Yes, it's very possible with friction and heat to make these things, since again, we're talking about a different density material, to all of a sudden make them wavy. So it's always best to kind of almost do things in passes, then let it breathe for a second. Same goes for binding. Ooh, buffing binding and then getting binding separation from the fretboard. That's a fun one. Especially if you've rushed the construction of a neck and you haven't given this time to cure, and all of a sudden you hand it to someone who takes it to a buffing wheel going at full speed in a production environment. All of a sudden this starts to peel away from that and it becomes an ugly mess. Yeah, done that a couple times.
So that's a ton of information to throw at you in about an hour. Other than every one of them, how many questions do you have? Someone's got to have something. What do you got?
What do you think, like, for the average, guitar player setting up this guitar rig, doesn't really want to take it to, someone as skilled as you? What do you think, like, the most important things to take away from that?
Okay. First, if you're going to try to do this on your own, tools, get the simple stuff first. Sanding pads, sticky tape. It doesn't even have to be this. It can just be a bastard mill file that you get at Ace Hardware. Remember, I said this could be just a straight stick of wood. Spring for some nice files, right? You're looking at maybe 50 to 100 bucks. You don't have to have a fancy jig like this. You could simply take the neck off, put a clamp on the flat part of the headstock to hold it in place. That way, you're not chasing 6 things at the same time. But just a few items. And other than this, this is stuff you could carry in your gig bag. What else you got?
If you've got one really high fret
Mm-hmm.
that makes your sanding beam rock, and it's the fret and not your neck rope.
That's a great question. We come back to our good buddy, the O'Reilly feeler gauge, right? Look for 3 thousandths. That's the super thin one, almost at the very beginning, right? Like this. So if you know you have a high fret and you can identify it, you got a tool like this, like a fret rocker, where you can just set it on 3, and if it goes back and forth, you know that one in the middle, and it goes click, 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 click. You know the one in the middle is high. Take your feeler gauge, run it underneath that fret. If the corner of the feeler gauge goes underneath the fret, you know it's unseated. If it's not, then that means that it wasn't leveled. Do a full level if it's not. But if it's unseated, there are a couple of things we can do. One is just with the fretting hammer, give it a love tap. Seat it back down in. Make sure that it goes back in by checking with your feeler gauge. If you want to make sure it stays, swipe a little paste wax to either side of the fret and wick in some water-thin CA. Start in the middle, work your way out to the outside of the fretboard, stop about 1/4 of an inch before you get to the end, because it will work its way out. If you put too much on, it will wick its way around the neck, and now you've got a mess.
It's so thin, it'll wick its way into any open surface. So with wood, it'll really sink in.
What you're doing then, as soon as you do that, the paste wax will prevent the CA from sticking to the fretboard. Immediately wipe that away, because that will take away any of the residual stuff that's on the fretboard. The stuff that wicked down in will help to hold the fret in place. It will help to fill any gaps that are in between all the tangs underneath, and it will truly improve like the transfer of vibration. Gluing in the fret is always a good idea. Now, this is another little Sumac tool. This fret rocker also doubles as what they call a fret kisser. So there's a cutting diamond surface here. So these two surfaces that don't have the cutting slide on the good frets, but will grind down the tall one. But that's usually how I will take care of a tall fret like that. It's typically unseated.
So if you're doing a full fret level and you have one that's gonna make your sanding beam rock, should you take that one down? And
If you're doing the full fret level and you notice you have one that's making the beam rock, check your truss rod because you may have too much back bow. Because remember that initial thing, we're looking to get we're looking to get as level as we possibly can. Then, if you have marked your frets, you've done your cut, and you can see that you have cut all your marker away on, you've made contact on every fret, you shouldn't have a high fret. If you do, it has come unseated. That's the only way it would happen.
A good little add-on to your first bottle of CA glue, especially for the thin stuff, is what they call a whip tip. It's just a tiny little plastic tip with a really, really needle-thin point, so you can do very pinpoint application.
It makes controlling the CA much, much easier.
Boy, the thin stuff is hard to control.
Any other questions? Gotta have something. I know you got something. What do you got?
What? So, I already know the answer to this, but what fret materials or actually I should say this, which fretboard woods are the easiest to work with frets? And then stainless steel.
Right.
Which fretboard material does it hate the most?
Fretboard materials, the easiest ones to work with are rosewood. Rosewood is by far the easiest to deal with. Maple is fine as long as you don't have to paint it. If you're going to do an oil finish, but if you're going to be painting it or putting like clear coat on it, it's just a lot of additional steps that make it a pain in the butt. It's not that it's hard, it's just tedious. As I talked about before, with hardness levels of fret wire, nickel silver, I love it. Evo, I love it a little bit less for two reasons. One, it's harder than nickel silver, and two, it's gold. I don't like gold on a guitar. Gold hardware belongs on a black Les Paul Custom, period. None other. Everyone, so I can't tell you how many, and you did this too. It came in as a student to MI. I want to make a purple guitar with gold hardware. Yeah, I know. So.
No, you got Alpine White.
Yeah,
you got
right.
the white custom.
Nope.
No?
Chrome looks better on that. Or nickel looks better on that. Then stainless steel. Stainless steel is a monumental pain in the butt. Rosewood works the best for getting a fret to seat. Ebony is great, but it's very brittle. It has a tendency to chip. The absolute worst to try to fret, particularly with stainless, is roasted maple. Roasted maple is, you would think it would be harder, it's not. It's actually a little bit softer and it's very brittle. I did a run of Abazi Custom, or Abazi Concepts Loradas. That's an 8-string guitar, multi-scale, 24 frets, and by the end, the 24th fret, the last fret's this long. Roasted maple, stainless. Compound fret job, or compound radius, 16 to 20. Nightmare. Not cool. Any other questions? I hope you guys learned something. Please feel free to come up here and check out the tools. So, thanks for coming.
Obviously, I forgot to write the last part, so I forgot to
Oh, there you go. Yep. Polish.